Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a video about I got a different all-in-one water cooler for my CPU. The reason I went with this one is it supports 12 volt 4-pin RGB as opposed to 3-pin 5 volt. So this is analog versus digital, and the reason I'm doing that is my motherboard only supports the 4-pin outs versus like you need a different motherboard like Aura. AMD's Aura Sync works, I think, better. A lot of their newer boards support the 3-pin. And I think addressable RGB, which is the 3-pin, is actually a little bit better. It has like usually more color options, or more colors can be displayed at a single time. But because my board is, I should have selected my board better. The CPU cooler that I got is this Cooler Master, which you can kind of see in there. See a bunch of wires and crap because of the way I had to set it up in there, and there's limited space in this case, but it doesn't work with 4-pin, it uses the 3-pin. So it has its own controller box, which is kind of back in there somewhere. You wouldn't be able to see it right now, but it's got its own separate controller box that I've got to use for that, and then it uses the USB cable to plug it into the motherboard and allow you to control it, but it needs its own software to run on versus being able to work with MSI's Mystic Light software. So I'm running in on one software package, and then everything else runs on the MSI Mystic Light. So I have to do two different programs, and then they don't really synchronize together. So that and the fans that came with the Cooler Master one were both, one was completely dead out of the box, the other one was making noise out of the box. I may be able to still send it back. I may do that. If not, I'll use it for something else because I can just use different. I've been using different fans with it. It's worked fine. It just like I say, it doesn't work with my other RGB equipment to synchronize. So I've gotten this instead. This is from, I think it's DeepCool is the company that I ordered from. For some reason, nothing on here mentions that name, which is sort of weird, but this is their Captain 120 RGB EX. And I mean, this calls it like Gamer Storm. So maybe that is the brand. I should probably know what the hell brand of something I'm doing before I make a video. I will definitely verify here. But I'm going to open the box up and we'll see what they included with it. I'll be right back. Alright, so yeah, I looked back on the order on Amazon. It's definitely DeepCool, but for some reason it doesn't say DeepCool like anywhere in the box that I can see, which is strange. And but the one manual here does say DeepCool, so I don't know like if Gamer Storm is like a series, you know, and DeepCool is the manufacturer, or what the story is. It's, who knows, it's nothing important, but whatever, this is the model. So this is the bag full of different bracket types. It supports a lot of different brackets. You've got AMD, AM4, AM3 Plus, all the way down to FM2, FM2 Plus, and FM1 it says. And you've got like a, looks like a case badge. Yeah, like Gamer Storm or DeepCool, whatever the hell they're calling themselves, case badge. And then there's a bracket back here for what looks like socket 1366, which is the old Intel X58 chipset, as I remember. It's either 58 or 79, but I think it's 58. And then we've got here various cables. See, there's the 4-pin RGB cable that I was talking about. If it was 3 pins, one of them is blocked off, and so it won't work with, they're incompatible with the 4-pin connection. And this includes like an LED strip, which is nice. So you're getting an LED strip with it. You're getting the cooler itself. The fan is just kind of a generic fan, though. It doesn't have any RGB, so that's sort of a letdown that they don't give you an RGB fan with it. But I have, you can't really see it in there, but I have what's from Fantex, the company that made the case, what's called a halo, and it allows you to mount like this thin overlay over the fan itself, and then that overlay has RGB lighting in it, and it makes it look as though the fan is RGB even though it's not. So like the fan I've been using in there, some of my previous videos you may have seen, it looked like it's lit up. It's not the fan doing that, it's the halo, which is cool. They come in 120mm and 140mm sizes, so depending on what kind of case fan you're using, you can use either one. But that's pretty nice that they give you those options. But you get your little manuals, design manual. This is the user manual on how to install it. So I'm going to have to take apart, you know, this stuff, get that out. One nice thing about removing this thing is I'm going to get the controller out of the box that thing requires, or out of my case, I should say. So that'll be, that whole controller case or box can come out of there. A bunch of cables can come out. And then all I have to do is run this thing directly, or, you know, this one, directly to the motherboard with this 4-pin, and I'll be able to control the lighting on it and the LED strip, which wherever I decide to figure out where to put that. I'll be able to be controlled from within Windows using the MSI Mystic Light software, and then I can uninstall the Cooler Master software. And then I'll hold on. Either I'll, like I say, try to send this back to Amazon, although I think I'm past my return date anyway, or I may try to hold on to it and put it on a different machine at a later time. But I'll be right back once I get this thing apart and start getting the new machine, or the new cooler hooked up. So I'll be back in a minute. All right, so I've got the old CPU cooler off there, just as an FYI to install on AM4. Actually, I think both of them, unless your motherboard just happens to be supporting a bracket that somehow works with this, you've got to remove the existing back plate and mounting hardware. So I've got, see, that stuff was what was holding the previous CPU cooler into place, and those are what was already on the board. So the other one I just installed, and it was lickety split right on there. I had to take the back plate off. Now I have to try to install, this is the AM4. Apparently this works for both sides, so you just flip it over depending on what CPU you have, and it has holes drilled out for whatever kind of processor you've got. So in my case, I'm using this side, and then AM4 it says is, I'm guessing these, just however it lines up with your motherboard though, pretty much. And then they didn't really do a proper job of labeling the bags, so you've got these pieces of mounting hardware are going to be screwed into the corner, so to speak. I'll be able to show you better when I get it set up. And then you take the long screws out of this and these circular nuts to hold it into place, and then you cinch the water block down onto these center holes using some of the other screws that came with it. But they put all the screws and nuts in the Intel bag, and then the AMD just has these mounting plates or brackets, or whatever you want to call them. So they didn't really separate it out, so you'd be able to say, oh, definitely these are the screws I need for AMD. So they kind of threw everything in the Intel bag. Just bear that in mind if you end up having to set one of these up. But I'll continue the video here in a minute once I get more into the case. Be right back. Alright, so far so good. Basically, you put that bracket on the back, run these 4 long screws all the way through it, and then you tighten them down with these cylindrical shaped nuts. Make sure that you take there's 2 sides. The black side of the nut should be facing the board. That's why you see all these silver sides facing out. But they've got like a little piece of rubbery, papery like material adhered to the one side of the nut, so when you screw it tight to your board, you're not scratching it with the metal. So that was nice of them to do that. But that's the next step on the board, the next step in the installation you should be doing. Ensure that you read the instructions pretty closely, because I already had to partially redo this. I had it in reverse order of the picture. It's pretty straightforward, but I'm dumb and I don't read things all that well before I try to get them working. So just bear that in mind again when you do this, that you need to have the black side of those facing against your board, or you might scratch your PCB or even damage some kind of component on there. So just keep that in mind. Be right back when I finish the next step. Alright, so an addendum to what I just said a minute ago, but I had this on there backwards. Basically, the side that says whatever kind of board you have needs to be the side that faces in towards the motherboard. So like the other way I had it, I had the screws coming through here, and then as you can see, that kind of raised area there was making the screws too short when I got them to the other side. What you're supposed to do is turn it over, and you can see that it actually lines up perfectly and then just fits into place where it's supposed to be. And then I imagine, see, now the screws don't even move, and you stick it as one thing, and then you have the extra length you need on the other side. There wasn't enough room after I mounted the bars on it to get the little nuts. Yeah, cat's talking. It's been very, very needy tonight. But so I goofed up, but this is a learning experience. I've never used this model before, so bear with me. But like I said, I think I got it now, and I'll put this back in and then try to see if everything mounts the way it's supposed to. But I think we're getting pretty close. Be right back. So you can see that did the trick. Now I've got the mounting hardware in there, and they've got the secondary nuts on the outside hooked up. And according to the instructions, you want the circles in the center there to be facing in towards the CPU and not outward. So like if this was reversed and the circles were on the outside, you'd be wrong. So bear that in mind again when you go set this up. You want those on the inside. Next up, I should be able to connect my water block, so I'll be right back. Alright, I got everything hooked up, I think. It's actually kind of an interesting looking block. I don't know how well I feel about this tube the way that they've got it on there. I've never seen another water block that needed a third tube like that. I'm not sure how that helps things, but whatever. And I kind of goofed up in routing this. I wasn't thinking about it. I already got plugged in. I just want to see if this works. I can always clean up the wiring a little bit later. But yeah, like I say, there's still just no way to make this wiring look happy down here. This case just doesn't have the space to hide anything. So it is what it is. But I think everything was connected correctly. I've got my two RGB headers down here. You can, let's see, down here there's two 4-pin headers, and everything from the CPU block to that fan there to the halo that's on the fan down here, and then the case itself actually laces into it. The power button laces into it, and then there's like a little glowing LED on top of the case. Where is it at? Yeah, just that little strip right in there, you can see lights up and will synchronize in color with the rest of the case. But I'm going to go ahead and take a minute and go set it up in the living room. My only concern, as you can see, it's going to be pretty I think that'll be alright. It looks flush, but that the glass, the plate glass in the front, might be rubbing right up against that tube. So that's hopefully not going to be a problem. But everything looks like it got mounted correctly. It's on there pretty solidly. Doesn't look like it's going to move or anything. One thing I noticed when I had put these in here, I just thumb tightened them down. You definitely want to give them a little tweak with a screwdriver too, because it seems like you think that they're tight with your thumbs, but they can move a little bit further. And if you don't, as soon as you put this on it, like they start to wobble a little bit. So just bear that in mind if you use this model. But I'm going to go hook it up, and we'll see what happens. I'll be back in a few. So I've got everything set up. You can kind of see the rainbow effects pretty much work. Evidently, like I said, this is a standard RGB and not an addressable RGB cooler, so it can't do multiple colors at one time. I think my RAM honestly is a little bit more advanced than the rest of the system is, because you can see that Patriot Viper RGB memory can do all kinds of colors at one time, and strobing and all sorts of different effects, and everything else is all doing pretty much single color changes at any given time. The weird thing I'm having here is, like, you can see the CPU cooler and then the fans are not the same color. They're not synchronized. It's like the CPU cooler is blue and then the fans are purple, or one's green and one's something else. And the MSI Mystic Light software is kind of janky. It's like even if I tell it to shut everything off, the CPU and the fans stay on, but the RAM shuts off. It's like I can't get the other ones to fully shut down, and they don't even necessarily work with the colors I tell them to work as. So like if I set everything to red, the RAM picks it up and turns red just fine, but the CPU might be like a weird light green color, and the fans like don't even seem to do red, they do purple. So I don't know what the hell's going on. I tried reinstalling the MSI Mystic Light software a bunch of times and fiddling around with the settings and seeing what I could figure out and Googling it. A lot of people apparently have problems with all this RGB shit, so you know how that goes. It's like, early adopters fee, I guess, for some of these kind of features, is that they don't always work 100% correctly. So maybe with a BIOS revision here in the near future, we'll get to see this working better. But that said, I hope everybody liked the video. If you have any questions on installing the CPU cooler that we're using here, the temps, by the way, are idling like around 27 degrees, so it's definitely doing a good job in terms of keeping the processor cold as we would want it to do. But if anybody has any questions or wants to leave a comment, please go ahead and feel free to do so in the comment section. Maybe throw the video a like, and maybe even subscribe to the channel if you feel like it. Thanks for watching. Have a great night. Bye.